Well, hello, everyone. Good evening. Well, at least for me, it's evening. Welcome back to another episode of Coding with Culp. Today, we're going to be diving into something special, at least special for me. We're taking a look at a graphical version of Hunt the Wumpus on this machine right here, the Mega65. I wrote it in BASIC. It was a lot of fun for me. It really kind of felt like reliving my childhood, or really my teenage years. I was a teenager in the 1980s when I got my first microcomputers. And I spent so many hours as a teenager writing programs on my Commodore 64. And by so many hours, I mean hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of hours. So if you're a fan of retro gaming or programming, or you're just curious about maybe one of the earliest kind of adventure games that there was, you're in for a treat. So Hunt the Wumpus was originally created in 1973 as a purely text-based game, but I wanted to bring it to life here on the Mega 65 with graphics. I wanted to do sound, but we'll talk about that in just a bit. On this really kind of amazing modern take on the Commodore 65. Before we continue, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit the like button and maybe even subscribe. If you're interested in what kind of content I produce mostly tech related content. I do a little bit of modern programming. I do some retro programming like this, and I do a lot of stuff with retro computers. For example, coming up, I've got two builds I'm going to do. I'm going to be building a full-sized Altair 8800 replica, and I'm going to be building a modern Apple I replica. And I have a restoration that I'm going to do on a TRS-80 Model 4. It is quite simply one of the single dirtiest, grimiest, filthiest computers I have ever gotten in. And what really stunned me was when I plugged it in and turned it on, it works. But this thing is absolutely filthy. And I wouldn't be surprised if we find things or evidence of things having lived in it. But anyways, let's talk about this machine right here before we get into Hunt the Wumpus. This right here is the Mega 65. It's a modern re-imaging of the Commodore 65. The Commodore 65 was a prototype that Commodore was working on, and it was meant to be the successor of the Commodore 64. Now, you're probably thinking, oh, well, the Amiga was the successor to the Commodore 64. And maybe in some ways, but the Mega 65 was going to be an 8-bit machine, just like the Commodore 64, which Commodore was working on the Commodore 65, in like 1988, late 1980s, really super early 1990s. So that kind of, in a way, tells you maybe how out of touch Commodore really was with the market by that time, and maybe even how desperate they were that they were trying to bring an 8-bit computer to market in the late 1980s. Would it have been successful? I don't know. By that time, most people had started moving on to PCs or 16-bit machines like the Amiga, the Atari ST, and even the Mac. But anyways, the Mega 65 is built with modern hardware. It's FPGA-based hardware, meaning it doesn't emulate the Commodore 65. It actually recreates it in hardware. And it also allows for things like enhanced speed. This thing runs at 40 megahertz, more memory, and more modern conveniences like SD card storage and HDMI out. In fact, it has HDMI and VGA out. I'm using HDMI. Comes with a 3.5-inch floppy drive, and it even supports Commodore 64 mode and Commodore 64 software and peripherals. For example, it's got a cartridge port on here, and I can throw in a lot of my Commodore 64 cartridges, and they work just fine. But anyways, enough about this machine right here. We're going to get to this, and we're going to take a look at it in just a bit. But let's talk about the game Hunt the Wumpus. Hunt the Wumpus is, in fact, one of my favorite games of all time, despite the fact that it's incredibly simplistic. And it's probably because it was one of the first games that I ever played on a computer. And I don't remember the exact year. Maybe it was 1979, maybe it was 1980. It was a long time ago, whatever it was. And my first contact with computing and computers was at school. And I'm pretty sure it was a TRS-80 Model 1. But once again, my memory is fuzzy. But what I do remember is going to our school library, and I found this book and its predecessor, 101 Basic Computer Games by David All, the yellow book. And in going through them, there was a ton of games that you could type in. So if you're not familiar, if you're like somebody who's not an old person like me, computer books and magazines used to publish actual computer programs that you could type in a language called BASIC, and even sometimes assembly or machine code. And there were tons and tons of books and magazines and everything else. Heck, even math books at the time I can remember would have basic programs in them. Even Dragon Magazine. I'm a Dungeons and Dragons nerd. Surprise, surprise. And even Dungeon Magazine, or Dragon Magazine, excuse me, at least once, maybe even multiple times, had some basic programs that you could type in. But anyways, let's get to Hunt the Wumpus. So my first contact was really on a microcomputer. I think it was TRS-80, possibly a Model 1. And it came in this magazine, or this book right here. And you can see it, let's see here, right here, page 178, 181. 178, 181. There we go. So here we go. It was right here, and the game looked pretty fascinating. But anyways, this isn't the first version of Hunt the Wumpus. Hunt the Wumpus was actually made by a guy by the name of Gregory Yob. And he made it on, originally, a mainframe computer, not a microcomputer, not an 8-bit system in the 1970s. And he made it in, I think, 1973. Might need to fact check me on that, but I believe it was 1973. And I don't remember the exact mainframe. Might have been an HP mainframe. Can't remember. Anyways, he was tired of some of the games that he'd been playing that were hide-and-seek style games. And in a way, Hunt the Wumpus is a hide-and-seek style game, because they were played on a grid and they were really predictable. And so he wanted to write a game that had less predictability in it, with different maps that were not on a strict grid. And so he wrote Hunt the Wumpus. And it was originally published, well, let me talk about how it was distributed. So it wasn't published, it was distributed, and it went from computing center to computing center, making its way across the US and across the globe, really. And people began playing it. And it was a purely 100% text-based game, usually played on a teletype or a terminal, CRT terminal. And so anyways, it was then published in Creative Computing Magazine. And then it was published in the Best of Creative Computing Magazine. I happen to have volume 1 right here. And so you can see the original article, right? Let's see here. Computer games, right up here at the top, and Hunt the Wumpus, 247. So let's switch over to 247. Wow, turned right to it. And so this is the original article for Hunt the Wumpus. I love this artwork here, and it shows some of the dangers in the cave, bats, and I'm assuming that's the Wumpus right there, and you got bottomless pits, etc. And this right here is the shape of the cave. It's a dodecahedron shape, a 20-sided shape, and each one of the vertexes is a room. And each room has 1, 2, 3 exits from it. And so what happens in Hunt the Wumpus is you're cast into this 20-room cave, and you have 1 arrow. And inside of the cave is the fearsome Wumpus that you're trying to defeat. And then there's also these bottomless pits. If you ever are in a room that has a bottomless pit in it, you fall to your death. You die and lose the game. There are also bats in the cave, giant bats, and if you end up in a room with a giant bat, they're going to pick you up and drop you in the cave randomly somewhere. Now, I believe in Gregory Yob's version, if I'm not mistaken, the bats could in fact drop you onto the Wumpus or drop you onto a bottomless pit. In the version we make, we're not going to make it that difficult. So bats are guaranteed to not drop you there, but I'm going to show you how to change it if you want. And then finally, of course, there's the Wumpus. If you ever wind up in the room with the Wumpus, he eats you, you're dead. And so what you got to do is you have to work out from clues where the Wumpus is, shoot your arrow, and if you guess right, you kill the Wumpus, you win the game, you can leave the cave. Couple other things, and that is clues. So in our version, if you are in a room that is directly adjacent to the Wumpus, you're going to see a big red blood spot on the floor, letting you know that the Wumpus is nearby. That means one of the rooms nearby is the Wumpus. If you are in a room that's next to the bottomless pit or a bottomless pit, you're going to hear the sound of the howling wind as it rushes down that pit. And then finally, if you're in a room next to bats, you're going to hear the bats chirping. Now then, I don't have the magazine. Well, I do have the magazine. Well, here's the sample runs right here. And over here is the actual listing. Which, by the way, I did not look at any listings prior to making this version. Maybe I should have. I don't know. But I didn't look at any versions prior to making this. So anyways, in the Best of Creative Computing Volume 2, which I do have a copy of, I just don't have it up here with me, they published Wumpus 2. And Wumpus 2 changed things a little bit by rearranging the room into different shapes, or rearranging the cave, excuse me, into different shapes. So you could have a different game. And I'm going to show you how to do that in this version also. So let's go ahead, let's fire up the Mega65, and let's take a look at my version of Hunt the Wumpus. And I'm going to talk you through the code. We're not going to code it live or anything like that. I'm just going to run down through the code and kind of talk you through it so you know how it works. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the trials and tribulations and challenges I had while writing it, not the least of which was time. I actually started this way back in December, and it's currently the beginning of February. And I started in December and got a ton of work done on it. It went pretty smoothly. But you see, here's the thing. I'm a teacher. I had 2 weeks off during December. I wrote a couple of games during that 2 weeks. And so I got started on the Mega65 version of Hunt the Wumpus and thought, oh, I'm going to have it done in no time. And then things went a little bit slower than I wanted to. And then I had to go back to work. And so then I had 0 time. I run a robotics club, and it's actually an incredibly successful robotics club. I've run it for about 26 years, and I'm not bragging or anything. I guess I am. We participate in a robotic sport called bot ball, and my teams have been Oklahoma and Texas state champions, more than any other team out there. And now we're competing in VEX, and 2 of my 3 teams have qualified for regionals. And so I work every single weekend so the kids can get ready, and I work after school late many days. So anyways, my wife is a robotics widow. But anyways, without further ado, let's go ahead, let's fire up that Mega65, and let's take a look at the code. All right, everybody, let's go ahead and fire up the Mega65 here. And there we go. We're at the Mega65 boot up screen. And before I get into running the game and going through the code, first of all, let me say that I had an enormous amount of trouble getting this part of the video shot. This is like try number 534, I think. When I first started it a couple weeks ago, I was using my capture card, which is an Elgato HD60S. I have not used it in quite a while. And I updated all the software, all the capture stuff that it came with, and was having massive issues locking onto the signal, the HDMI signal from the Mega65. And eventually I got all that fixed. I got it working. It didn't look good. And it was stretched out into 16:9. But I got it working. I said, okay, this will work at least. And so I shot the video. It was about 30-40 minutes long, and it had no sound. Even though it claimed it was recording my microphone, it had no sound. And then it just took me forever to try to get it to work, and I finally gave up. And so I just went with OBS, which is what I should have went with to begin with. OBS can be a little clunky and gets a little bit of a bad reputation, but you know what? It just works. And so I got OBS up and going, and then I was having a bunch of other issues, and then the disaster struck. Okay, and disaster was I lost my Wumpus program. I don't know what happened. I saved it. I went to reload it, and there was nothing there. Anyways, when I load it, there was no basic program. And so I don't know what happened. I'm pretty sure I didn't turn the machine off. Maybe I did. But I don't remember pressing new. I don't know what happened. I don't know where it went. Now, I'm not blaming the Mega65. It was probably 100% my fault. It was really late at night. I'd been really frustrated with a lot of the AV stuff that I was trying to use and get things recorded. And I'd made a few changes to the Wumpus program along the way, things that I noticed that were wrong. And so I don't know what happened. I don't know where it went. And so I was really frustrated. I went to the Mega65 Discord channel. And let me say this about the Mega65 community. They are absolutely amazing. I'm sure every time I go there to ask a question, and I'm not there that often, I'm sure somebody rolls their eyes and goes, oh God, what a stupid question. But everybody there is so incredibly friendly. They're incredibly helpful, and it is one of the best retro computing communities that I've interacted with. And I can't say that I've had that experience with every single retro computing community that I've interacted with. And I believe it was Dan Sanderson himself was trying to help me out with recovering the program. Now, I might be stupid. I'm not that stupid. I did have a backup. The backup was a little bit behind the current version that got wiped out. And so it really didn't take me long to recreate those changes. In fact, what I did was I just looked at the video that I had shot that had no sound, and I just recreated the changes that were in that video. So not a big deal. But once again, the Mega65 community, awesome. So now, without further ado, let's run the program. Okay, let's go ahead, load it up, and let's run it. So here we go, right there, Wumpus, that one right there. All right, let's hit run. I ran. Let's hit run. Okay. So right here's the title screen. I'm going to tell you that I am 100% not proud of this title screen. I am not an artist. I am one of the world's worst artists, as you're going to see when we get to the sprites that I designed. But this title screen, I cannot tell you the enormous number of hours it took me to get this thing to display properly, because once again, the Mega65 uses a ancient file format called an IFF format, and it took me both jumping back and forth between Linux and Windows to reduce it in size and do all stuff. Anyways, it took me forever. And I used a little bit of AI, a little bit of Photoshop, a little bit of GIMP to get this title screen here. And if anybody can do a better title screen, I believe this is 320 by 200 by 8 bits. So if you can do a better title screen, send it to me. I'll absolutely put it in there. I'll stick your name on it, give you credit, and I'll split the $0 that I'll make from Wumpus with you. Anyways, let's go ahead, continue on. So here's the instructions. I am not going to read them all, but you can see down at the bottom, we're going to use the arrow keys to move. We're going to use WASD to shoot our arrow. And we're going to use Q to quit if we want to get out. So we're going to choose our difficulty level. We're going to choose 1 to start out with, and basically 1, 2, or 3, it chooses the number of bats and pits you have. You can add more. A few little changes you just have to make. And so I'm going to press 1. It says, you coward, because yeah, we're a coward. And I'm going to put a map right up here in the upper right so that you can follow along as I call out room numbers and stuff like that. We're in room number 18 right now, which is in the outermost ring of the dodecahedron shape. And the way I do directions in here, I consider anything pointing towards the center of the dodecahedron, that inner ring, to be up. And so then I define left and right from that. So here at 18, up will take us to 9, left will take us to 19, and right will take us to room number 17. But we've got a bigger problem. That is, the Wumpus is in one of the rooms nearby, and we know that from the red blood spot. So we have a 1/3 chance of dying. It's not the best start we can have. So let's go left to room number 19. Oh, and there we go. There's the Wumpus. That my horrible Wumpus sprite. And it says, you've been eaten by the Wumpus. And I am not a music person. I'm not a sound person. I have no music, no sound at all in the game. But it is something I would love to add. And I would love to add something, right here that plays in the background. And you got to make fun of me. I'm not a music person. But I like to, some music that goes bum bum ba bum bum ba bum ba bum ba bum, and it add a little bit more, atmosphere to the game. But let's go ahead. Let's press P to play again. And once again, let's go with easy. We're gonna go with easy for a while as I demonstrate some of the parts of the game. So that was Death by Wumpus. Oh, also notice a cloaked statue here seems to watch you. So what I did to add a little bit of atmosphere to the game is most of the rooms have a message attached to them, and whenever you return to that room and during that game, it's going to have that same message. So room 18 will always say a cloaked statue here seems to watch you whenever you're playing this particular game. If you start it again, room 18 may have a different message. And I did that because originally I wasn't displaying the room numbers, and so everything looked the same. And that made it a little bit boring kind of playing and hard to track. Even with that, you still might need to do some hand mapping as you go through. But once again, we got dropped in room 18, which I think was the same room we got dropped in last time, wasn't it? So once again, let's go left to room number 19. All right, so room number 19, eerie shadows dance along the walls. Let's go left to room number 20. I want to find a bottomless pit. I want to die by pit now. So room number 20, up would take us to 13, and left continues to take us to 16. And then let's go to room 17. All right, let's go into the middle ring. Up will take us to room number 7. Murky Pond lies still here. Let's go right. Let's go to room 6. Let's go to room 15. Let's go to room 14. I'm going right, by the way, to get there. Let's go to room 13. Oh, the Wumpus is nearby. We know the Wumpus is not in room 20. We've already been to room 20. We know the Wumpus is not in room 14 because that's where we came from. So that means the Wumpus has to be in room 12. Let's win the game. Let's press A to shoot our arrow to the left. Oh, did I come? Oh, I forgot which direction I'd come from. Ah! It's a 55-year-old brain with no memory. All right, let's try it again. Oh, we're in room 1. Oh, and we have the Wumpus nearby. I tell you what, let's go down to room 8. Okay. Oh, we hear the sound of fluttering bats nearby. All right. So let's try to run into some bats. There they are. And of the sprites that are in the game, the bats are the only ones I'm only kind of sort of proud of. They actually look a bit like bats. But bats have picked you up, dropped you elsewhere in the cave. Press a key. So let's press a key. It's going to dump us elsewhere into the cave in room number 20. And they're going to go back to the same room. Now, in this version of Hunt the Wumpus, the bats will not drop you on the Wumpus, and they will not drop you on a bottomless pit. That can be easily changed by commenting out a line or two, and I'll show you how to do that. But we're in room number 20, so let's go up to room 13. All right, let's go. I don't know. Let's go left to room 14, and let's just keep going left. Room 15, room 6. Okay, so we know room 6 is the Wumpus is nearby. So I tell you what, let's go back to room 15. Let's go down to room 16. Let's go over to room 17. Now let's go up to room 7. All right, so here's the deal. We know that the Wumpus has to be up from room 6. So let's go ahead and press W, and we should win. Yes, yes. My memory's improving. Your arrow flies true, strikes the Wumpus dead. I'd like to have some type of congratulatory music or sound play. All right, the only thing I got to demonstrate now is how to die in a pit. Tell you what, let's go with hard. There'll be 3 pits in the game, so we ought to be able to find them. All right, you hear the claws clicking on stones. Go down from room 2, putting us in room 10. You feel a draft nearby. Perfect. So that means there is a bottomless pit in one of the 2 rooms, either left or right, because I came from the top. So if we go left, okay, it's got to be, and there's another bottomless pit near that one. So it's got to be here. So here we go. And we fell into the pit. And once again, what I would love to have is maybe that bomb, bomb, ba bomb, bomb, ba bomb, ba bomb, ba bomb play. And then as you fall, it starts out with a high pitch, and then slowly goes lower pitched as you fall. And then when you get down to the very bottom and you can't be seen, it plays that music. So, anyways, that's the game. Let's play. Let's hit Q to quit, and let's go ahead and. Well, let's take a look at the code. Let's actually, there we go. I'm hitting the wrong button. I want F9. I can't see behind my microphone. My microphone's actually covering up the Mega65. Okay, so you're going to notice as I go through this that I do a lot of programming techniques that you would have never done or done very rarely back in the 80s because of limited memory. For example, you probably wouldn't have had this many REM statements in a large program in the 1980s because such limited memory. You didn't want to take up that memory with REM statements. But the program isn't that large, so I've got the space for it. All right, so here we go. We're going to start out, making sure we're at 40 megahertz. We're going to sprite clear. We're going to load our sprites, set our MC1 and MC2 color. We're going to come over here. We're going to display the title screen. We're going to restore our palette, and then we're going to display the instructions. Now, I'm not going to jump around. In other words, I'm not going to jump over to 6,000 to show you the title screen and then come back and then go to 7,000. We're just going to go through the code. It's easy to understand. So then we've got our variable declaration area. I used UD, L, and R for up, down, left, and right, so I can refer to it that way in the code rather than trying for my old brain to remember, was up 1 or did I start with down or, whatever. Over here, this is number of bats and number of pits, and we're going to initially set them equal to 3. Now, in modern programming languages, I am definitely a space things out type of guy, mostly because of my bad eyesight. It helps. SD stands for shot direction. It's going to keep track of the shot direction. Now is where y'all are going to make fun of me. The cave array, even I completely understand, and in modern programming languages, Python, C, C++, whatever I'd be using, they're all 0 based, and so is Mega65 on their indices. But I do start with 1 on here. Okay, so room number 1 is in the second spot in the index. Okay, not the 0th index. It's in index 1, which is technically the second spot. I know programmers understand that, but anyways. And then each row has 6 elements in it, and those 6 elements are going to hold the room number. And then the number of the room that connects in the up direction, the down direction, the left direction, the right direction, and then the number of the random message that it gets assigned. And if a direction doesn't have a room number that it connects to, it holds, I believe, a 0. All right, then over here, these arrays right here, BT and BP, holds the position of the bats and the position of the pits. Basically, the 3 rooms that can hold bats and pits. This holds all the difficulty messages that get printed out when we choose our difficulty setting. This right here holds all the cave messages that we have, all those random cave messages. And these are our messages. You're a coward, you can do better, you're a real hunter, and good luck. All this does right here, it's just going to load up it's going to read our data statements. We'll take a look at those here in just a bit. But it's going to read the data statements for each one of the rooms. And it's going to set the last thing, this 5, to -1, because that's the message that it holds. That's the 6th element, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. And so we're going to initially set it to -1 for no message. Here we're going to read in our messages. We're going to set our screen, graphic screen, our border, and then we're going to restart the game. This is the routine where basically I just reset all the variables. All right, let's look at our main game loop. This is where, a lot of the action occurs. So we're going to do while 1. We're going to do this forever. Now, if I was using a modern language like, once again, Python or C, C++, or, any of that stuff, I'd probably have a variable called like, I don't know, is playing or game active, and set it equal to true, and then do, while game is playing or something. But anyways, we're going to draw the room. We're going to look at that routine in a minute. PD stands for player death. We're going to set it equal to 0 at the top of these checks. First thing we're going to do, we're going to say is the player location, because PL holds the player location. Is it equal to the Wumpus location? That's WL. If so, we're going to go to 9,000, which means the Wumpus ate you. All of my death routines start at 9,000. And then we're just going to loop through here for I equals 0 to 2. We're going to check and see if we fell into a pit or if we got picked up by bats. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to say, hey, if the room here in BPI, in the ith element, is equal to the player's location, there's a pit there, and the player's in a room with a pit, and we're going to set pit death, that's actually what that stands for, equal to 1. We fell into a pit. Then we're going to check and see if there's a bat in the room, and if so, what we're going to do is we're just going to display the bat sprite, and that's what that does. We're going to sleep for a couple of seconds, and then we're going to go sub 2,000, which all that does is it chooses a new location for the player. And then over here, we're going to say, hey, if PD equals 1, if pit death equals 1, we're going to go to 9100, which is the pit death routine. I can even do a little rim statement for that. There we go. All right, we're going to wait for the user to enter in something into the keyboard, some user input. Then what we're going to do is we're just going to check our arrows keys, and then we're going to check and see check the WASD and Q keys. All we're going to do here is we're going to say, hey, so this right here is the left arrow. If a string is equal to left arrow, they hit the left arrow, and there is a room to the left, meaning that in our cave array, we're going to look at the PLth element, and then we're going to look at the L, basically the room that's in the Lth element, and see if it's greater than 0. If so, that means there is a room to the left. We're going to set the player's location to that room, and then we're going to go sub 8,300. So this is basically dependent upon whether you went left, right, up, and down. We'll take a look at that in just a minute. Over here, we're just going to take a look and see if they hit WAS or D. We're going to set the shot direction variable to that, and then we're going to go to 5,000, which all we're going to do is we're going to check and see, did we hit the Wumpus or are we dead? And then if they hit Q, we're going to go to 11,000, which is, in fact, my quit routine. All right, we're going to set the game difficulty here at 1,000. Pretty self-explanatory. We're going to clear the screen, set the pen color to green, print out our menu, wait for some input, and it's basically a little do loop. We're going to wait until they press 1, 2, 3, or Q. If they press Q, means they want to quit. We're going to go to 11,000. Otherwise, we're going to print out that they're generating the cave, and what this does is sets the variable in equal to, remember they're going to press 1, 2, or 3, the ASCII value of 1, 2, or 3. From that, we're going to subtract 49 and add 1. That's going to give us a number from 1 to 3. and we're going to set our number of bats and our number of pits equal to that. And then we're going to sleep 2 seconds so it looks like we're actually doing some thinking in the background when we're generating our cave. And then we return back up into our main game loop. All right, picked up by bats. All we're going to do is we're going to print that you've been picked up by bats. We don't actually need the screen clear either. I was doing things differently back then, so let me get rid of that. So you've been picked up by bats. It's going to ask you to press a key, and what this does is it is going to generate a new player location from 1 to 21. And then we're just going to check and see, is the player location equal to the Wumpus location, or is the player location equal to any of the bat locations? Okay, that's what this does. Could have done it in a loop, but it was just 3 elements. It was easier to do it this way. And if so, we need to choose a new location. So we're going to go back up to 2070. We're also going to check to see if we're in any of the bottomless pit locations, because we can't drop them in a bottomless pit. And if we're trying to drop them in a bottomless pit, we're going to go back up to 2070 and once again generate a new value. Now what you can do is you can comment these lines. Just put a rim statement in front of them, and it's going to make the game harder, because then the bats could drop you on another bat, or they could drop you in a pit ending the game, or drop you on the Wumpus. And if they drop you on a bat, it's going to chain the bats. So they'll drop you on a bat, and then that bat may drop you on a bat, which then may drop you on a bat, etc. All right. So here, 3000 is where we actually draw the scene. We're going to clear our screen. We're going to turn off our sprites here. And then right here, we're going to set the pen color to that, cave color that I got. I think it's one of the brown colors and maybe one of the light gray. We're going to draw a circle right in the dead center of the screen. And then what we're going to do is we're going to see if we need to draw exits to the left, right, up, or down. All we're going to do is check our cave array again, and we're just going to see, is there a room in the up direction? If so, draw a rectangle indicating the exit. Now technically we don't have to check left and right, because in our particular cave design there is always an exit to the left or to the right, always. However, if you decide to make a different cave shape, that might not be the case. All right, next what we're going to do says draw a black hole if we're on a pit. So we're going to check and see if we're in a pit. And if we are, we're going to draw a big old black circle there. We're going to draw blood if a Wumpus is near, but first thing we're going to do is we're going to check and see if the Wumpus is there, if we're on the Wumpus location. So if the Wumpus location is equal to the player location, we're going to activate the Wumpus sprite, and so that's going to display the Wumpus sprite. Then what we're going to do, this stands for Wumpus near, and we're just going to check and see, do any of the caves up, down, left, or right, do any of those rooms, contain the Wumpus? If so, we're going to make WN equal to 1. And then we're just going to check if WN equals 1, then, draw that circle. I could have, just drawn the circle here and then exit it out of the for loop, but maybe somebody can, help me out. I don't like exiting or go-toing out of for loops. And I don't think the Mega65 Basic has a way to end a loop early. But then again, I'm not sure. All right. Over here, line number 3235, we are going to draw the player sprite. So that's the last graphic stuff that we do. So the player sprite will be drawn on top of the pit, or on top of the Wumpus, or on top of the bats. Then we're going to draw out, or we're going to put in our messages. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to set our pen to green. Up here we're going to print out the room number. That's what this does up here in the upper left. Then what we're going to do is we're going to set bottomless pit and BN bat near, that's what that means, to 0. In other words, we're going to assume that there are no bottomless pits nearby and that there are no bats nearby. And then we're just going to iterate for I equals 0 to 2, 0, 1, and 2. Through our BP and BT bottomless pit and bat arrays, and once again we're going to check in the up direction, we're going to check the down direction, the left direction, and the right direction. And if there is a bottomless pit or a bat nearby, we're going to set BP equal to 1 or BN equal to 1. Okay? And then all we do when we get out of there and we're done checking is we're just going to look. If BP equals 1, well, we got a bottomless pit nearby. Let's print that out. And same thing. If we got bats nearby, let's print that out. And then we're going to print the random room message that gets assigned. All right, reset variables. Game and variables, pretty easy. We're going to set all the BP and BT elements to -1, indicating that there is no bat or pit in that element. Then what we're going to do, we're going to reset all the room messages in the cave array. We're going to get the new game difficulty. Right here, we are going to set the player location. So we're going to, once again, generate a random location. Now this says print player location, so I do print out some debugging information behind the scenes. Back when I was first starting the game, this can be taken out. I may very well take it out before I stick it up on the file host, but it basically prints out on in text behind the scenes the player location, bat locations, Wumpus locations, pit locations, stuff like that. Anyways, so what we're going to do is we're going to generate a random player location. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to generate a Wumpus location. But remember, the player and the Wumpus can't be in the same spot. So we're going to set them equal to each other. And we're basically just going to say, hey, while the Wumpus location and the player location are the same, let's generate a new Wumpus location. And so it's going to keep looping through here until the Wumpus location and the player location are different. We're going to print that out behind the scenes. And then we're going to generate our bottomless pit locations. And we're basically going to do the same thing. We're going to go from 0 to number of pits minus 1. So remember, number of pits might be equal to 3, but we'd only want to go 0, 1, and 2. Okay? That would be 3 elements. And so we're going to do the same thing. We're going to set that pit location to the player location. And then we're going to go through and we're going to check and make sure that the bottomless pit location does not equal the player location or the Wumpus location or any of the other bottomless pit locations. And if it does, we're going to generate a new one and we're going to keep going, you know, through these lines right here until we've got a location that's unique. We're going to assign it to the ith element of that array. We're going to print it out behind the scenes so we can, you know, debug if we needed to. And then we're going to go back and do it again for the next one. We're going to do the exact same thing for the bats. I'm not going to really explain that because it's pretty much the same thing. All right, now we're going to just place the random messages. Now say that they're random, but they're not really 100% random because it really just depends upon where everything is. It's going to start from the first room. If there's nothing in that room, there's no bottomless pit and there's no bats, it will then assign it the next available message. I would like to change this so that it is random. What I would have to do is I would have to keep track of which messages have already been used and, you know, that kind of stuff. All right, now over here, 5,000. This is where if the player is taking a shot. So the player says, hey, I think the Wumpus is over here, and they hit WASD, and remember up there in our main game loop, it's going to set shot direction to up, down, left, or right. And then all we're going to do is we're just going to check. If the shot direction is equal to up, we're just going to say, and the Wumpus location is in fact equal, okay, to that location that they shot to, we're going to go to 5,500. We have won the game. And that's what that does right here. We're going to clear the screen. We're going to say, congratulations, you've done it. Go to 10,000. It's going to wait for some input, okay? And where they're either going to restart the game or quit the game. So that's pretty easy. And then, if none of these things are true, the player missed and the player's dead. And so we're going to go to 9150, which is my death by out of arrows routine. And by the way, there are some versions of Hunt the Wumpus where you can find extra arrows in the cave, and you know, you could add that if you wanted to. All right, title screen, super simple. We're just going to we're going to open up a new screen. We're going to set it to the active screen. We're going to load the IFF. And then we're just going to wait for somebody to press a key. I am not going to go through the instructions. They're just print statements. Although one thing I do need to do, because I just noticed that, I need to set the proper text mode, but I'll do that later. Oh, no, no. Okay, here we go. All right, draw direction. Whenever you, and this is that go-to from the arrow directions up in the main game loop. We're going to draw which arrow, which direction you're going, left, right, up, or down. And I added that kind of late too because it wasn't always, apparent which direction you were going. I mean, you knew you pressed left, right, up, or down, but I thought this just added a little bit more to the game. So all we're going to do is we're going to draw an arrow based upon, which key that they pressed, and then we're going to return back to the main game loop. All right, here's all my stuff for losing the game. And it even tells you, 90-30 to 90-60. You got eaten by the Wumpus. Fell into a bottomless pit. That's all this. And, once again, this is the routine that animates that sprite scrolling down. I'd love to be able to play a falling note. And then over here, you've run out of arrows. Over here, this is 10,000. This is I turn off all my sprites and basically wait until you do something. Press a key. This is basically my press Q or P routine. If you press Q to quit, we're going to go to 11,000, which is right here. We're going to close the screen, set our borders back to blue, and our foreground color, foreground back to white, and then end. And then we got all of our room data here, and that's pretty much the end. The data is in this format right here. The first piece of data is the room number. I didn't really need to have that there, but whatever. Then right here, we've got the up direction. So the room number, if you that is directly up from this room. So there is no room up from room 1. The room to the left. Oh, no, excuse me, down. So going down from room 1 will lead you to room 8. Then left and right. And then I've got all the data for those messages that are there. And that is pretty much it. I am not so thin-skinned that I can't take, positive feedback and criticism. Like I said, there are a lot of parts of this program I really want to improve. I haven't worked with BASIC in a long time. And I mean, I've done little stuff here and there, don't get me wrong. I've done a few things, but this is the most extensive thing I've done in BASIC in a long time. And I really want to investigate how to do the editing on a real editor that will improve stuff so much, and then transfer it over to the Mega65 or the Mega65 emulator. But anyways, I'm going to throw this up on the file host at some point. It might not be as soon as the video's done and uploaded, but we'll see. All right. Until then, keep coding. It's always a great day to learn how to code. And bye-bye, everybody.